I'm gonna be king of the pirates. If you're king of the pirates, then what am I? God of the pirates? The world's treasure will be mine. You see, Buggy was introduced in Chapter 9 roughly 2.5 decades ago. Being considered the first major antagonist in the series, he has somehow remained in relevance since. Year by year, slowly but surely becoming more of a gag character that has remained relevant solely due to comedic reasons. Then Oda basically dropped a bomb that recontextualized everything. Chapter 1056 Cross Guild was revealed. This weak coward managed to take advantage of Doflamingo's fall, and somehow has built an empire on the black market. Buggy was an apprentice on the Roger Pirates, the crew of Gol D. Roger, the Pirate King, the man who found Laugh Tale, decoded the Void Century, and launched the entire age of piracy, that is the backdrop of One Piece's world. He was not a peripheral recruit. Roger chose him. He was present during some of the most consequential moments in that crew's history, including the 3-day battle between the Roger Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates, where as a small child he was holding 8 knives, fighting full-grown pirates. When the Roger Pirates were preparing for their final voyage to Laugh Tale, Buggy fell ill with a high fever. Shanks, his closest friend and his fiercest rival, the person who would become one of the 4 most powerful pirates in the world, stayed behind to look after him. 2 boys missed the final island. One unlucky coincidence is the fulcrum everything in Buggy's life pivots on. He was present at Roger's execution in Logtown, the moment that fired the starting gun on the entire pirate age, and the story of One Piece itself. He watched the man who was like a father to him die publicly, and he walked away and formed a pirate crew in East Blue. He became Luffy's first real antagonist, the opening of the story. Oda planted him at the very beginning, and he keeps reappearing. Every major stage for the first half of the story. Both in Down and Marineford. He emerged from Marineford as a warlord. Then he emerged from the warlord system as a Yonko. This man's entire career is miraculously failing upwards. And I can't help but not entertain the fact that this man is essential in the endgame we're dawning on. The single most important event in Buggy's life is presented as a throwaway flashback gag, and I want to sit in that framing for a moment before undoing it. Buggy found what he believed was a treasure map. A map in the context of the Roger Pirates voyage that could have led to Laugh Tale for all we know. He hid a devil fruit in his mouth to prevent Shanks from acquiring it, because Buggy knew, from Shanks' own explanation, that eating it would cost him his ability to swim. Then Shanks startled him again. He swallowed it by accident. He lost the ability to swim permanently. Then he dove into the sea to retrieve the map he'd dropped in the shock of swallowing the fruit, and he sank. The map sank with him. He could not reach it. This is the moment that ends Buggy's life as he intended to live it. A single, stupid, meaningless wave sent his life down a completely different path. Then when the Roger Pirates made their final approach to Laugh Tale, Buggy fell ill with a high fever. The timing is very specific here. He and Toki were the only devil fruit users on the crew, and both fell sick at precisely the same point. Shanks stayed behind to care for Buggy, which means neither of them went to the island. While the rest of the crew stood on Laugh Tale and heard the world's greatest secret and laughed together, Buggy was in a sickbed on a ship, and Shanks was watching over him. And history was happening on the other side of the water without either of them. Buggy failed to reach Laugh Tale because he accidentally ate a fruit, and because his body reacted to proximity to the island, and because his crewmate chose to stay with him rather than leave him alone. There is no version of this story where Buggy could have done something differently and made it inside. The universe simply decided. But now consider if none of that ever happened. If Shanks didn't startle him, if he kept the fruit in his cheek, he has a treasure map, he can swim, and the illness that kept him from Laugh Tale either does not occur or occurs differently. He reaches the island, he hears what Roger heard. He walks off that ship as a man who knows the truth of the world. What does Buggy look like then? I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But due to the fact that he did not make it to Laugh Tale, it becomes a crucible of his character, way more so than it is for Shanks. Now if you think about it, Buggy's cowardice and self-preservation instinct are not personality traits that precede the accident. They are responses to having learned at a formative age that the universe is arbitrary and cruel, and that you can lose everything. Buggy blames Shanks, but the fault is not really on Shanks. Shanks did not know that Buggy had a devil fruit in his hand. He didn't force the fruit down Buggy's throat. But the psychological reality of carrying the blame for 30 years has nothing to do with whether the blame is fair. Buggy has to put the accident somewhere in order to survive it. He cannot blame the wave. He cannot blame a fruit. So he blames the person who was adjacent to both. The person who explained what devil fruits cost, who was there when the wave hit, who grew up afterward to become exactly what Buggy was supposed to become. The unfairness of the blame is almost beside the point. The blame is load-bearing. Without it, all Buggy has is the universe's indifference, and that is a much heavier thing to carry. As I have stated multiple times in previous videos, Oda builds devil fruit powers as philosophical statements about their users. It is the design principle of the system. Buggy's fruit is the chop chop fruit. His devil fruit gives Buggy the ability to split his body into disconnected pieces and control them independently. He is permanently immune to being cut. Under pressure, he comes apart. He can only be reassembled by himself. He is at all times, literally never entirely in one place. His body separates under pressure. He comes apart when startled, when threatened, when someone hits him unexpectedly, rather than absorb the blow. He scatters. He cannot be permanently reassembled by anyone but himself, and he only reassembles completely in moments of genuine rage, or crucially, genuine ambition. Every time the fruit shows us Buggy partially put together, floating around as a head or a torso or a pair of hands, it is showing us the precise condition of a person who has never quite allowed themselves to be fully in one place at once, who has been spiritually compartmentalized. Buggy's introduction. He is terrorizing a town. He has a cannon that fires exploding parts of himself. He is genuinely intimidating within the context currently. What does Buggy do? He tries to execute Luffy for touching his hat, the hat that belonged to Shanks, the hat he recognizes immediately upon seeing it. He claims to hate Shanks. What does his choice reveal? The gap between his public performance, I despise Shanks and everything he represents, and his private fixation is the entire character in miniature, presented in the first arc of the series. Buggy is not trying to be a great pirate, he is trying to make money. He finds a map to hidden treasure not out of adventurous spirit but out of greed. He tries to steal a devil fruit not to become powerful but to sell it. His entire plan is mercenary and small. This is a man who was on Roger's crew, who could have been a great pirate, who had every structural advantage, and he is out here running a side hustle. The accident happens because he is corner cutting. The fruit drops because he panicked. The map sinks because he chose to be in the water for money rather than staying on the ship out of dignity. Every disaster is connected. Every misfortune cascades from one moment of small thinking. Buggy's ascent with Impel Down, Marineford, Warlord, and now Yonko follows an identical mechanism each time. He is placed by accident in proximity to something genuinely significant. People observe his proximity to the significant thing and fill in the narrative gap with the only story that makes sense given his pedigree. They conclude, correctly by their own logic, that someone sailing under Roger's flag must be dangerous. They grant him status. He acquires armies. He terrifies himself with his own reputation, and then, because he has no alternative, continues. At Impel Down, he was not there because of a great crime. He is there because of a careless mistake. He is on level 1, the least dangerous level. He is a clown who got caught. When Luffy arrives, Buggy does not have a plan. He has proximity to someone who does. He attaches himself to Luffy's energy and rides the current of someone else's conviction through 6 levels of the world's worst prison. He recruits followers not through strength, but through the performance of it. Men who have nothing believe in the man who seems most certain, and Buggy has mastered the projection of certainty. Buggy's greatest actual talent, the one genuinely operative skill he has that no one accounts for, is charisma. He is extraordinarily good at making people believe in him in the moment. This is a real power. It is not the power he wanted, but it has kept him alive through every crisis. At Marineford, he ends up in the center of the most important battle in a generation by accident. At some point during the Battle of Marineford, Buggy acquires a broadcast transponder snail and begins transmitting live footage of the war to the world. The world watched Ace die. The world watched the Marines' finest hour become their most bruising humiliation, all framed by Buggy's running commentary. All of it broadcast live to every kingdom, every pirate, every civilian watching. The psychological damage to the world government's aura of invincibility that day was staggering, and a meaningful portion of it was delivered by a clown who was trying to perform for a crowd. Without the broadcast, Marineford is a horror that the world government can spin. With the broadcast, Marineford is a horror that the entire world witnessed unfiltered. The Navy lost that war on the information field in a way it barely lost it on the physical field. Buggy did not understand what he was doing. He was just doing what he always does, making himself the center of attention, performing for whoever is watching. The fact that whoever was watching happened to be every living person on the planet that day is not something he chose. He was adjacent. The world saw a Roger Pirates veteran walking upright through the apocalypse, and the Warlord letter arrived immediately after. Well, up to Marineford, you could chalk up Buggy's ascent to pure comedic reasons, but Cross-Guild revelations reinforced to me that Oda has more in store for this man. His bounty is now 3.1 billion berries. Crocodile and Mihawk created Cross-Guild. Cross-Guild is a mercenary organization formed by Crocodile and Mihawk after the dissolution of the Warlord system. Its core business model is the inverse of the normal bounty system. Instead of hunting pirates for the Marines, Cross-Guild places bounties on Marines themselves, paying pirates to hunt down naval officers. The organization was founded by Crocodile and Mihawk as genuine co-leaders, with Buggy recruited essentially as a useful figurehead. When Cross Guild's promotional material was distributed, Buggy's subordinates placed him front and center on the poster with Crocodile and Mihawk flanking him, with the Marines unable to imagine that the man in the middle wasn't the leader. Concluded, Buggy ran the whole operation. The misread went global before anyone corrected it. Buggy became the nominal president of the most dangerous bounty organization in the world, was elevated to Yonko status on the strength of a graphic design decision, and Crocodile and Mihawk, the two men who actually built the thing, were listed as his subordinates. The world thinks Buggy leads it. Crocodile and Mihawk know the truth. As Mihawk pointed out, it is useful to have someone else be the primary target of the world government's attention. And to be honest, this is the perfect arrangement since these roles fit these three characters perfectly. Crocodile is a man who spent years building a secret criminal empire in Alabasta, positioning himself as a hero while orchestrating a coup. He is a planner, a long-game thinker, a man whose intelligence is genuine and whose ego is attached to that intelligence. He lost to Luffy. He was humiliated. He rebuilt himself in Impel Down. And now he is the real power in Cross Guild. The brain, the strategist, the one who actually runs the numbers. Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman. Unarguably, his title is not contested. His power is not a matter of perception. He is exactly what his reputation says he is. He has no interest in the Yonko title, no interest in politics, no interest in anything except being the greatest swordsman in the world and finding out if Zoro ever becomes worthy of a real fight. And both of them, both the calculating strategist and the world's most powerful swordsman, are listed as subordinates to Buggy the Clown. Crocodile resents Buggy, and Mihawk tolerates him, but neither of them can do anything about it. Because the fiction of Buggy's power is more load-bearing than either of their actual powers. You can fight a real man, but to fight a misunderstanding is a different ballgame. Buggy is the only character in the series whose reputation is entirely disconnected from his actual capability, and Oda has sustained that gap for 25 years without resolving it, because the gap itself is his character. Crocodile's reputation roughly tracks his power. Mihawk's reputation exactly tracks his too. Buggy's reputation has literally zero relationship to his power whatsoever. It means whatever the world needs it to mean. But here is where Buggy's character ties into the overall theme of One Piece. In this series, power is perception. The Yonko system, the entire hierarchy of maritime authority, does not reward strength. It rewards the appearance of strength, or more precisely, the world's inability to disprove strength. And no one in the series demonstrates this more completely than Buggy. And this is what makes Buggy different from every other character who fails upward. The others at least fail upward along a trajectory toward their own improvement. Buggy fails upward in a perfect straight line. He does not get stronger. Instead, the world only gets worse at reading him. And the perfection about his character is that this is not presented as a problem to be fixed. The way it is delivered to us through the entire course of the series, it is presented as the normal operation of a world where information is incomplete. Crocodile and Mihawk are arguing about how to best expand Cross Guild's power. Buggy, who has been beaten up, berated, and sidelined in his own organization for the duration of this scene, gives us a moment which recontextualizes his entire character. We see him being genuine and vulnerable, looking back in envy towards his memories together with Shanks. This is all wrong. This wasn't the life I wanted for myself. This is a man at rock bottom, a man who has been failing upwards his entire life, and has only power in name and perception. At his core, he has nothing. We then see Buggy being stripped of all inhibitions. A man with nothing to lose, and nothing to protect anymore. With ego out of the picture, we finally see Buggy follow his own will, and verbalize what he wants. If Shank's gonna do it, then I want to be the king of the pirates. He screams desperately to all of his men that they have forgotten what the true dream of every pirate should be. He then says, "Let's go claim the One Piece. Let's go and take it." The chapter also reveals the actual source of Buggy's resentment towards Shanks. It was not as the series implied for years, simply jealousy of Shanks' strength. It was this. After Roger died, Buggy hoped Shanks would immediately go after the One Piece, that they would go together, that the Roger pirates' dream would continue in their hands. Shanks refused. He said he was not ready, and that is Buggy's wound. Shanks chose not to go, and Buggy, who had lost his ability to swim, who had lost the map, who had already been excluded from Laugh Tale by an act of biology, was left alone with a dream he had no way to chase, and a best friend who had walked away from it. He spent the next 20+ years in East Blue, raiding villages. Watch how Buggy behaves around the concept of Roger. Watch the micro-expressions Oda gives him. Watch him cry at Roger's execution. Now, decades later, take the stage at Marineford with the grandiosity of a man performing greatness he doesn't believe he's capable of. And notice that the performance is just a little too committed to be purely cynical. Something in him still believes. Buggy's cowardice is a defense mechanism. the most elegant, perfectly constructed defense mechanism in the series. If he never tries seriously, he cannot seriously fail. If everything is a joke, the grief of watching Shanks become what they were both supposed to become never has to surface. If the treasure is always theoretically out there but always just out of reach, then the thing he actually wants, to matter, to have been one of the greats, to have stood at Laugh Tale, never has to be confronted as a loss. The Buggy persona is a costume he put on the day Roger died. It fits so well he forgot he was wearing it. Chapter 1082 gave us the moment where that costume and image shattered. And underneath it is a Roger Pirate's apprentice who wanted to be Pirate King. Is Buggy jealous of Shanks? Yes, obviously. Is he grieving Shanks? I think the more accurate word here is haunted. Shanks is not an enemy Buggy can fight. He is a mirror. Every time Shanks' name appears in a newspaper, Emperor, World Figure, the man with the straw hat, Buggy is forced to look at the reflection of their shared starting point and see what it became in someone else's hands. The performance of indifference that Buggy has maintained for 30 years is not cynicism. It is self-protection. If he admitted he cared, if he let himself want the thing he has always wanted, out loud, in front of witnesses, he would have to reckon with the question of why he has not been going after it. And the answer to that question is too complicated and too painful. And all of those things together mean he cannot locate the point where his life stopped being what it should have been. He can only locate the blur. This is exactly why Chapter 1082 is the most important moment in Buggy's entire storyline, because he finally becomes a real pirate. For the first time in his life, he truly takes his destiny in his own hands. The desire to be Pirate King, that one single desire he's been grasping onto since he was a kid. The desire to carry on Roger's will. The envy, the jealousy, the anger. We see him face all of those emotions in this singular chapter. And to be honest, if it weren't for this moment, I wouldn't even have made this video on Buggy. That's how important this was for his character arc. The speech he gives in the Cross Guild's meeting room. Trapped, humiliated, physically tortured, his body falling apart in the literal way it always falls apart under pressure, is the first time Buggy stops performing. The dialogue he then gives us. What dream drove you all to sea? Every moment you cling to life might be your last. So why ignore that screaming urge inside you? He is shouting at Mihawk and Crocodile. But more than that, he is shouting at himself. He is saying after 3 decades that he is going for the One Piece. Whether he gets there is almost beside the point. The point is that he said it. After 30 years of telling himself he does not want the thing he has always wanted, he finally stops pretending, simply admitting in front of people who will mock you for it that you still want something. The Shanks question is one of the series' most overdue reckonings. They grew up together. They fought constantly. They were inseparable. Then one rose, one didn't. How Oda chooses to resolve this dynamic is one of the things I'm looking forward to. When that conversation happens, and it will happen, because Oda does not plant these trees without intending to harvest them. In classical theatrical tradition, the fool is the one character in the king's court who can speak the truth. The fool does not hold power, which means the truth cannot be extracted from him by force. His absurdity is his armor. He says the thing that everyone else is too afraid to say. The court jester is the most politically subversive person in the room precisely because he is never taken seriously. Buggy is Oda's fool. He is the character who, precisely because he is never taken seriously, is positioned to demonstrate the most serious things. He shows that the world's power hierarchy is theatrical, that the line between emperor and nobody is a matter of whose name has been associated with whose at the right historical moment. He shows that proximity to greatness is not the same as greatness, but that the world, in practice, cannot reliably tell the difference. He shows what happens to a person who was present at the founding of a legend and then had to live the rest of their life in its footnote. He shows, through pure absurdist farce, that the difference between him and a genuine emperor is mostly a matter of how the story gets told. And because he is the fool, Oda can make these arguments without the narrative having to endorse them explicitly. It just shows Buggy becoming an emperor and allows the comedy of that to carry the point. Buggy has no pride to protect, no reputation to live up to, because his reputation is entirely fabricated and he knows it. He does not fight for anything larger than himself, which in the context of One Piece, where every other major character is in the service of some principle or some lineage, is almost absurdly honest. He wants treasure. He wants to survive. He wants in certain specific moments to matter. The fool symbolism is glossed over his entire character. The boasting, the cowardice, the comedic fury, the grandiose speeches to crews that overestimate him is a shield. Men who genuinely do not care, do not cry at executions. Buggy cares about everything. The performance of not caring is a full-time job. Roger died. Shanks sailed away. The crew dispersed. Buggy went to East Blue. He has never once, in 25 years, sat with what that loss actually means to him. Well, not explicitly at least. The closest the series comes is Chapter 1082. And even there, the grief comes out as ambition, as declaration, as forward momentum rather than backward reckoning. This is accurate to how grief actually works for people who are afraid of it. It doesn't come out as grief. It comes out as performance, as overreaction, as picking fights, as running a criminal empire in East Blue, and then blaming your best friend for your bad decisions. Every Buggy moment is a man screaming, "Look at me," to a world that keeps looking through him to find Shanks. He has been attached to Luffy's story, Shanks' story, Roger's story, the story of every major event in the series. He has never been the story himself. He has been the reaction shot. And in a series where the deepest desire a character can have is the desire to be free, a man whose entire life has been defined by being the person next to the protagonist is not a joke. He is tragic in a way. Does he want the One Piece? Does he want to surpass Shanks? Does he want to matter in a way that is unambiguous and self-generated, and not the product of someone misreading a poster? Probably all of these things, simultaneously and contradictorily. The people who dismiss Buggy as a pure comedic relief character are making the same mistake the world government makes. They cannot separate the image from the substance. The image is comedy. The substance is a person who lost everything before he started and has been running in place ever since. Treating the ambiguity as a flaw in the character misses the point. The ambiguity is the character. There is a word in Japanese, shuganai, that roughly translates as, "it cannot be helped." The resigned acceptance of what cannot be changed. The shrug that covers the wound. Buggy has been living in shuganai for 25 years. The entire arc of his life. From Roger's apprentice to East Blue Clown to Warlord to Yonko. All of it passing through him, rather than it being driven by him. This is the biography of a man who has never once decided that something was his to claim, until he grabbed the speaker and said, "Let's go take it." In the One Piece world, the world will try to tell you who you are supposed to be, and the most profound act of freedom is to refuse that narrative. Buggy has done it passively, accidentally, through the sheer involuntary comedy of his own existence. But the series is also about the will of D, about people who carry something inherited. Buggy was on Roger's crew. He heard Roger's last words. He was at the execution that launched the era. He was at Marineford when the era almost ended. He is in the final saga as one of the 4 most powerful pirates in the world. Accidental devil fruit eater. Accidental liberator of 241 prisoners. Accidental broadcaster of the world's most consequential war. Accidental founder of the most dangerous bounty organization in the series. Accidental Yonko. A man who dived into the sea for a map he couldn't keep. Lost his ability to swim in the process, and has been treading water ever since. And he still is convinced, somewhere under all that performance, that the treasure is still out there. And you know what? He's not wrong. He was just always standing in the wrong place at the right time, and in a world built on the gap between image and reality, that is almost enough in a way.